Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call to order January 14th, 2025 City Council Business Meeting. As we start, I've asked Commissioner Bullock, who served on City Council 20 plus years ago with our returning council member, if he would lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Could I start with the roll call of officers, please?
Westwood.
Here.
Conley. Here. Daniels. Here. Miller.
Here.
Ronnie.
Yes.
Rude. Yes. Tupin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Probably not the last one anymore.
The last one.
I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Conley, a second from Councilmember Ronning. Any discussion? Concerns on the agenda? For our new council member, what we do is this is something that we came up with in rules and procedures, and it basically helps ensure that stuff just doesn't get jammed onto the agenda before council is ready. So occasionally, things come up and don't allow us to follow our preferred practice of talking about it a session before we take action on it. But this is basically an opportunity for council to say, yep, we understand and agree, and then go from there. So that's built in as just a safety mechanism for council. Hearing no further discussion, let's do a roll call vote on that, please.
Conley.
Yes.
Daniels. Miller.
Yes.
Ronnie.
Yes.
Rude. Yes. Tupin.
Yes.
All right, next I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of December 10th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of December 10th.
Second.
All right, I heard a motion from Councilmember Tupin, a second from Councilmember Daniels. Any discussion? I will add just a comment that we have reached out to Dan Clark in the past, and it is not necessary that you have been present in order to vote. If you can vote to approve the minutes, however, if you're more comfortable not voting, that's also fine. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Conley.
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Ronnie.
Yes.
Rude. Yes. Tupin.
Yes.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for warrants payable.
I move to approve warrants payable in the amount of $637,410.42.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion from Councilmember Conley and a second from Councilmember Daniels. Discussion? Who are our folks who signed them today or this week? Okay, would either of you like to give us just an overview of how we spent $637,000?
Well, the biggest one was for Two Republic, of course,
Okay.
and their monthly contract plus incidental dumpsters all over town, but that was the biggest one. And then, of course, the creek rolls on in in our payables.
I have a follow-up question maybe for our clerk. As far as dumpsters all over town, I know sometimes we pick and drop them off, but my understanding is we don't ever have a charge for those. Is there a charge that I'm not aware of?
For
Okay.
which dumpster?
I know, so just
Well,
saying.
there's a dumpster, well, this dumpster, for instance. And then there's
Okay.
a garbage can at the library, and then I think there was two others mentioned, but I can't remember what they, but
Okay,
there
got-
were
yeah.
5 other additional.
Yeah, the ones
Okay,
that are.
and I know
like-
this one is a new, so.
Yeah,
okay.
like City Hall, the library, the,
Public park.
street, there's cans and like the
Okay,
parks
but-
have.
But those are part of it. This is a new one, so thanks.
That
for
wouldn't have been on
that.
it, I would
Okay,
think, but.
okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Were the two, the ones we had come in and sign?
Mhm.
Yeah, the bond payment.
3 bond payments, yeah.
Were
were
included in
included
that?
in that total.
Hearing no questions or comments, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote on that, please.
Conley.
Yes.
Daniels. Yes. Miller.
Yes.
Ronnie.
Yes.
Rude. Yes. Tupin.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor's reports. First off, I would like to acknowledge Commissioner Bullock for joining us this evening. Thank you. comment on the agenda before we start. A little bit rusty and out of practice. It's amazing how I just suddenly feel, and with a couple weeks off in there, kind of suddenly rushing to get things done. So if there's any omissions on the agenda, I apologize. Those are strictly mine. One that was in the notes to get on there that I failed to get on there was approval of the pasture lease. So that will be on for action at next time's meeting. Okay? Couple of just reports. The city water supply, you'll recall that we'd received a notice that our temporary city permit was expiring. We went ahead and extended it as opposed to filing to complete it. And the reason being, once you file it, it's done. So by extending it, it gives us the ability to grow and put that number out there. So Mike completed that. Field School Park update. There was some discussion and a couple things that have come up of, do we own it? Do we not own it? The answer is we do own it. However, there was a problem identified in the paperwork. It's just some wording in the thing, and that is actually the school board attorney and our attorney are working to present that, or to fix that, so that there's no longer any question about that.
We do own it?
We do own it. It is city. It's a clouded title, for lack of a better word.
Well, we don't like that.
Yeah, so we're getting it fixed sooner rather than later. Brewery Hill presentation is online from the December presentation. We are expecting some updates and some additional information based on the feedback from that, but the initial presentation is up. The 16-inch bypass and our main water system rehab, which are projects we've been talking about combining for next year. Because of the loan, we've had some follow-up conversations, and apparently that program changes a little bit as it goes, and so we are now going back to having those be two separate projects and loans that will be coming before the council in the future. So the 16-inch bypass has been, 20 plus years in the making. You probably got to deal with this before when they first started doing the development up on the West Bench. And now that that's being built out, it'll get us to a gravity-fed system as opposed to machinery, so it'll be cheaper, less likely to break down, all sorts of good things, and that's mostly being paid for by, a good chunk of that's being paid for by impact fees, but the advantage of both of these is that we're getting a 50% forgiveness on the loans. So that's kind of, anytime we can take $1 and turn it into $2, it's a good thing from a city perspective. Downtown master plan and growth policy. Planning board is working on those, and I anticipate relatively soon, basically as directed by the planning board, or indicated, I guess is probably the better word, that their latest updates are ready to be posted online. Those will be posted online as well for the public. There's first drafts that are out there, but as they get completed working their first draft, there'll be a second draft that's out there and then that'll be publicized for public comment. That'll be out there. Snow letters are going to be going out to the businesses on Broadway. Per code of how our code is written, it actually does apply to Broadway and not to the residential streets. We were working on making it so we can send it anywhere, and as we dived into the code, it actually just applies to Broadway. So those letters will be going out soon.
To all the businesses?
To all the businesses on Broadway. Yeah, so it's just kind of a general, here it is, and please don't make us write you a nastygram.
Okay.
Is it completely on Broadway or just the 8th to the 14th type of Broadway?
Yeah, on Broadway.
I think it's the business district, so.
8th to 14th.
No, I thought it was longer than that. I thought it went all the way.
Brian's been working on the letter,
Yeah.
so, and.
You have to pull up the ordinance, but I thought it was all, I don't know. I thought
Yeah,
it was
Brian
down
pulled
further.
up the ordinance,
Yeah.
and it'll go to everybody who the ordinance dictates.
Yeah.
Is that the
It's
short
more than-
answer?
It's more than just.
It's
the
more
down.
than just the downtown.
How far more?
Yeah.
It's down to your place.
Out of curiosity.
Yeah, okay.
I'd be getting one.
How?
And actually what I can do is just put letter in the packet. Is that all right?
Sure.
As far as snow removal on Broadway, I just have a quick question. There were some cars that were buried on the side street, and they went around them, and people got the car out, but there's still big snow drifts in parking spots on, like, the side street on 10th Street.
Okay.
I didn't know and there's a couple.
Yeah, as
places.
folks become aware of those, if they will let us know,
Okay.
we will go by. Our Public Works team has been doing a fantastic job this year. In fact, even on Sunday when we had the snow drift, they went out and, Mike jumped in the V-plow and was going around clearing the road.
I mean, I noticed they tried not to plow people in, but then it made snow banks in other places that there
Okay.
normally aren't, so.
Yeah,
Once the car's gone, it's like-
if you or your constituents just wanna send a letter in to me or to
Okay.
Public Works, we will get those taken care of. We are working with I am working with the, airport consultant. I've roped in Brian a little bit as well, but we are working with the, airport consultant to finish up our FAA AIP grant, conclusion, and, also finalizing the interlocal that we can present to council and to the county as well. So not any updates on that other than we are speaking weekly. The city upgrade grant was awarded as in process. You may have noticed the dumpster outside, and if you walked upstairs, you'd notice some holes in the wall. So we are gonna get, wiring from this millennium. Our EDA street grant, which is the street money, we've been, again, trying to, actually, that's gonna be a very, very small, it's a $3.5 million project, and 2.9 of it's coming from somebody else. We have everything but the award letter telling us that it's good. We keep having conversations telling us we've got it, but we're still missing the award letter. So we're planning accordingly. And then the Rocky Fork tear down, we're still in discussion, that'll be in the discussion portion of the meeting, so I'll wait and kind of talk about that. I just want to acknowledge that that is a project that is still out there. And we'll talk about that at the time about why I'm bringing it to council before we move forward. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Councilmember Rood.
What's our plan for upstairs as far as a draftsman architect to make this thing come alive?
So let me answer that question as best I can, and you tell me if I answered your question. So Brian Hanna, who's our building inspector, is actually acting as our general on this project. So we've reached out to the state to make sure there's no conflicts or audits or anything that's gonna come from that. And so he's doing an ongoing and working, but Brian Hanna is who's putting together that. And at this point, there is the potential for some structural rearranging, but mostly what's happening is plumbing and electrical.
Oh, the walls are coming down.
No, I think there will be some walls coming down, and those will be under the, Brian Hanna is running that, and as he says, we want to move this to there, I go, and we go from there.
Okay, and then we're gonna have any input on that design? And can we have input on what goes up there?
Give me more information.
I'm thinking of having the space for the council to, well, two things. Person mentioned to me having a place for when we have planning maps, the place that we can place mats that stay there, and we don't have to roll them up every time we have a meeting in here, that is, the mats are all, the plans are always out and available to the public to come look at them.
Plans of,
Well, what the planning board works on, and so, the maps, and that they'll be available, instead of rolled up every time we have court or city council.
I think I'm understanding. Let me make two suggestions, and you tell me if it's a hit or not. First one is go ahead and write up your comments and suggestions as they exist right now.
Okay.
And send those to planning@cityofredlodge.com. Ryan is answering that mailbox right now as well. And then CC me. And then secondly, I will ask Brian if he can come give a presentation to council at the next meeting
I would love that.
and have a discussion.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, it's huge up there.
Okay. There is, and I can give you at a very high level, what we're doing is we're looking at moving two of the folks from the front office upstairs, creating a little bit more room in the downstairs, but there's also possibility. So that project is gonna happen over 2 years, this year and next, the way the grant is written. This year, we're focusing primarily on the upstairs. They're also working on ADA compliance as we move forward. So like downstairs where that restroom is, as they work on how to make getting into here ADA all the way across the board, that restroom may in fact widen. So that's a potential wall down the road that may move, just to make that an ADA accessible restroom.
Okay.
So some of it, like I said, is still floating around and in discussions, but the parts that are being done are decided there. But I'll have Brian come and give that presentation. Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you. All right, I think that's everything that I had for that. Anything before we move into the business portion of our meeting? All right, so this is a little bit slim. Yes, ma'am?
I'm going to say public comment for.
Oh, thank you very much. So before we start, let me go to, on our agenda, we have public comments. This is anybody who'd like to stand and address the council on anything that's on the agenda tonight. We'll start with those in the room. You'll have 3 minutes, and if you would stand, the instructions are on the wall or also on the podium. So if you would stand and address, and we'll go ahead and officially open the public comment. If you'd start with your name.
Jeff DiBenedetto, 317 South Hagen, and also Vice Chair of the Planning Board. And I wanted to just briefly visit with the council on a couple of items on your agenda. One of them is the Planning Board is asking you to review our the priority list for what we see as the next of the priorities in the coming year. And then the other two items that I wanted to visit about is the agenda items related to the rezoning of the P1, or review of the zoning for P1 parcels. One of the things, I guess, as you look through the priorities, you'll notice that review of zoning regulations is the number 3 priority on that list, after completing the downtown master plan and the growth policy. Of what those we anticipate completing sometime in the March-April time period, as the mayor indicated. We're kind of in the final stages of that process, finishing up the review of both those documents, which will then be available for public review after that point. And we'd like to complete that process before we take on any zoning related issues. Given that, then what we sort of would anticipate then would be reviewing the P1 zoning designations as part of our zoning review process. And that would, and if the council desires that be placed in a higher priority than of all the zoning items that are slated to be looked at, then that would be fine, and that would be something that we could accommodate. Relative to the review of zoning regulations, we also anticipate a rather significant involvement by our contract planners, and part of that process would be the completion of a staff report that outlines the current zoning, current land uses, consistency with the current and or new growth policy and downtown master plan as approved by council, and receive from the planning staff their recommendations that we would then be able to act on and also be out for public review. As part of that zoning request, we also feel like we need adequate maps that show the current zoning, current uses, and proposed zone changes, printed at a scale that's easily readable and differentiates current zoning, land uses, and adjacent zoning for those parcels. So those were just basically briefly the comments I wanted to bring to the council, and just bring you up to date on where we're at with the growth policy master plan and what our anticipate. If you agree with the priority listing, then the review of the zoning regulations would follow on that. And we anticipate that to be sometime in the April to May time period, depending on other business that comes before the planning board.
And just, I may have blinked. Did we start with your name and I missed it? Okay, thank you. I wrote it down, but I didn't know if that's just because I know you, so thank you. Anyone else in the room? All right, seeing no one in the room, let me go to online. If there's any comments on the agenda, if you'd start by turning on your camera, or if that's not an option, at least flipping off mute. Seeing none, going once, twice, and 3 times just to make it official, we will go ahead and close that. And thank you for keeping me on track. All right, at that point, the next agenda item is the appointment of a council president. And I'll just kind of sneak in, after we do that, there were several agenda items that we have scheduled for next week, which is appointing the council members to the standing committees, and then appointing the various council reps to planning board, library, rural fire. But to do that, we like to get the council president out of the way and then leave that to the council president to kind of guide and direct that. So the way this will work is I will open nominations, and then there may be one or multiple nominations. Hopefully we get at least one. And then at any point, if somebody would like to move to close nominations, we'll close nominations, and then we'll vote in order until we get 4 or more on that. So I'll go ahead and open the floor for nominations at this time. Councilmember Reed?
I nominate Jody Ronning.
I second that nomination.
Okay, there's an a nomination and a second. I'm not sure if it requires a second, but we'll take it. That was Councilmember Rood who nominated and Councilmember Conley who seconded. Are there any other nominations? Somebody want to move to close nominations?
Close nomination.
All right, there's a motion to close nominations by Councilmember Daniels. I don't know if that requires a second either, does it? Yeah, so, any discussion?
I think that's a great idea. Experience, she's been leading us for a year, she's the second for several years.
All right. All right, hearing no other discussion, make it a roll call vote, please.
Conley?
Yeah.
Daniel?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Rude?
Yes.
Tupin?
All right. And while I have said it, no matter what the answer is, I will add, I strongly support council's decision. I think it's worked very well over the last year. I know Jody puts in, Councilmember Ronnie puts in a lot of time and hours outside, and certainly putting together an agenda this time without her and the standing committee's input, I noticed the vacancy. All right, so the next thing we have, and with council's blessing, what I'd like to do is reappoint various boards and parks, and I'd like to do them all at once. You guys have the letters in your packet. So for parks, there are actually 3 vacancies. Rod Fordall and Beth Graham both stated a desire and willingness to continue on. So I propose that they both be renominated. Madeline Cornfield has elected not to run again. She's been on there half of somebody else's term and then a term. And at this time, she's going to go ahead and step away from that. So there will be an ad for a vacancy in the Parks Board in the upcoming paper on Thursday. For the Cemetery District, we had Will Bernard, who is not here tonight because he's busy in California, helping him down in LA. So we appreciate him representing Montana well down there and hope will be safe. For the Carbon County Historic Preservation, we've got Marvin Keller. That is there, and so I would like someone to make a motion to approve of the mayor's reappointments as outlined.
I move to approve the mayor's reappointment.
I second that.
All right, motion by Councilmember Ronning, second by Councilmember Tupin. I'll get there.
Yeah, that's all right. We're making great time.
All right, any conversation and discussion? Yes.
Term for each.
Oh,
If we could include that.
yeah, for our minutes, what we found is it'll be easier if we do that. I did not get them down. Parks is,
3.
okay, so,
3 years.
3.
Parks is 3 years per the chair. We will validate that. Cemetery District is a 2-year, I believe. Do you happen to know Commissioner Bullock?
I do not.
All right, we will do a better job of including that in our minutes going forward.
I think it's Harmony County website.
What we'll have to do is, we'll have to add, what we'll do is we'll add a notes to our minutes for this time and then capture them the next time, just so that people can do that. So the minutes here state that we will include the term lengths in next week's summary. They'll have to look at two places, but at least it'll be there. It's been really tricky as we've been trying to go through and figure out vacancies, so it is important to do that. All right, next, I would like to approve the, county appointee to the planning board.
We didn't vote on that last one.
Pardon?
We didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, keeping me on track here. Was there any discussion other than I didn't include the terms?
No, I just really appreciate those people stepping up and volunteering. It takes a lot of time to serve on those boards and volunteer.
Should that include the planning board, city appointment too?
No,
No, gonna do it.
no, it does not.
County. Okay.
No, that'll be a separate action item.
Okay.
So this is just hearing no discussion on those reappointments to the various boards. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you. So the next one, it's an appointment, so that's why I apologize rushing that through. So, the way our planning board is structured, the representation is one member to be appointed by the city council from its membership. We'll do that at the next meeting. One member to be appointed by the city council. We have that, is currently, John
Great.
Gray is filling that position. One member to be appointed by the mayor upon the designation of the county commission of the county in which the city is located. And then 4 citizens to be appointed by the mayor. So the county has appointed, Marnie Eccles Bell. And so I would like to go ahead and request, council's, approval to officially instate her on the planning board.
I move to approve Marnie Eccles Bell as the county representative on the planning board.
I second that.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Conley and a second from Councilmember Tupin. Any discussion at the table?
I think she's gonna be a great addition.
All right. Thank you. Let's do a roll call vote.
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
All right, thank you. The next action item, is that we actually have 2 appeals for, resort tax appeals. So this is, an off-agenda meeting, primarily because a portion of the meeting is closed. We open those meetings for the public meeting. We close them where private information is discussed, and then we open them and take our action votes on that. There is an agenda item that council is working on to revisit that ordinance, I think in part because of the number of these that we're seeing, to see if that can be revisited to give that first line of approval to staff. I know there's also been some discussion as to whether we send that to council or we send that to a judge to handle it. So that's something that council will take up at a future time. But for now, the call is that council needs to select a date from their calendar. And so I will open the floor to nominations for potential dates.
How soon does it have to be? Is it like by next week or?
No, I don't know that there's a time frame, so I think when it works for council is when it works.
Like if it's in March, it's okay, or?
After we change the ordinance? Oh.
What about 5 o'clock on, January 28th?
That's our meeting.
That's our council meeting.
At
And
5 o'clock?
we'll also have,
work
sessions
Oh.
going.
Yeah, we may have.
How about
may
the
have-
21st, next Tuesday?
Resort tax board meeting.
Oh, yeah, we should pull up the calendar for the room.
There you go.
So we've got one that doesn't have stuff on it over there.
And I got one with stuff on it right here, so.
Do you want to go,
Typically, like,
do you want to go to a different?
Thursday night seems to be okay.
I'm okay with Thursdays.
I don't think there's any other meetings in chambers on Thursday night.
Yeah, generally Thursdays are pretty open. I'm good with a Thursday. So Thursday, the 23rd would be the next Thursday. Does anyone have any issues with next Thursday, the 23rd?
Do not. That will work for me.
And are we planning on 5 or 6, or?
I mean, I'd like to do 5 ideally.
Ideally.
Or
If we can
5:30.
still-
Because
5:30
get off
is fine,
work
yeah,
until
5:30 is
5,
fine.
so-
So do I have an official motion for Thursday, January 23rd at 5:30?
I move to hold the resort tax appeal on Thursday, January 23rd at 5:30 PM.
I second that.
Motion from Councilmember Ronning, second from Councilmember Conley. Any further discussion, or does that work for folks?
Okay.
All right.
I did.
Well, I'll direct staff to notify, the applicant, and if we find out, that doesn't work, we will certainly let you know. And additionally, that does have to be publicly noticed as a meeting, so staff will take care of making sure we get that publicly noticed.
And any available paperwork I'd love to have.
So the paperwork will be provided, once we go into closed session, and then collected at the end of closed session.
Thank you. And we have 2 of them?
We have 2 as of this point in time.
It's taxi, so.
Can you think of anything else I need to add to that? All right, let's go ahead and do a vote, please.
Conley?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Miller?
Yeah.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes.
Tupin?
Yes.
All right, the date is set, thank you. All right, so the last item we have in our business section is ordinance 969. I will entertain a motion, and if the motioner would please make sure to include second reading as part of the motion, it would be greatly appreciated.
I move to approve ordinance number 969, municipal code 6-1-4, reserved space, accessible parking, public hearing, second reading.
I have a motion from Councilmember Ronning. Do I have a second?
Conley.
All right, Councilmember from Councilmember Tupin. I'm sorry, Councilmember Conley was the motion. She was just talking very quiet, so. All right, and a second from Councilmember Tupin. What we will do, as we have been doing, that seems to be working well, is, we will have discussion at the table, and then we'll have our public hearing, and then bring it back to the table. So, can we get an overview or an introduction from a member of the committee that prepared this and brought it to this stage?
Yeah, Chris was really headlining this one, but essentially what this was writing in, some restrictions around, reserved parking spaces for specifically accessible parking, and also just put some guidelines in those to be a little bit more structured around the DMV and how it's currently actually being utilized, so really just cleaning up an ordinance.
And part of it was, the other one was was a little bit vague, and so people could request parking spots anywhere and everywhere and
Correct.
pay a little bit. So this kind of nails down what those requirements are. Any further discussion at the table before we go to public hearing? All right, as this is a public hearing, we'll go ahead and open the table for discussion on ordinance 969. I'll look to the room first. Bueller. Look to online. Seeing none, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Thank you for your patience as we keep this official. We'll close the public hearing and bring us back to the table. Any further discussion before we go to a vote?
Did we make sure we did all the correct terms?
I know that Chris went through and made many edits to that, but I think she did get that all cleaned up before.
Okay.
Before the last vote, because it does have to pass 2 in the
Right.
same form.
Yes, after the first, discussion that we had on it before we actually went to the hearing, she made those
Okay.
changes.
I'm just reading the one in here, so.
Yeah, we didn't make any changes at the first reading,
Yeah.
did we?
No.
Yeah, there was some.
Yeah, it was just a short, that one, because it said it was under the accessibility.
I think.
Oh, you changed it all to accessible parking instead of handicap.
Well, that was done.
But I think there's no edits from the first reading at this
no.
point.
Yeah, but I mean, those
No.
were all done
No, they
a while
were,
ago.
there was amendments done at the last meeting.
Yeah.
On it,
As amended.
yes,
That's amended, but.
as amended, but there
Oh, okay, I wasn't here at that.
Oh, it was to remove of the first floor, and to add an S after occupant,
Yes. Yep, and what you guys passed on the first.
so they were minor readings.
Councilmember Root?
What's our plan for out front?
help me understand.
I'm doing that a lot tonight, sorry. We are gonna designate an area in the front with the, paint the curb blue, get a sign that has a, disabled
At,
icon, or
at this
what are we
point,
doing?
what we have out front is municipal parking, which is covered by A1 in the section in there, so we've done that, and by the way, we've also worked with the county to put that over there. The accessible parking space in here is actually dictated for residents, so we have not had a request to have a handicap space out front, or a special accessible, thank you. I'm sorry, I spent 58 years in the other world, as
Okay.
my dad, so. So we don't have a request, nor, I don't think we've had a call to designate something specific out there. Council can certainly make a decision and take that up for discussion if they feel there's a need to.
Well, actually, they
it has-
gave us to do it.
Yeah, so there has not been a need.
Sorry, what Chelsea said?
Sorry, I was interrupting, so, as I'm one to do. I was, right, this is why I sit next to him so he can hit me with a hammer. It'll actually make this an easier process for doing that, provides those guidelines. But as of now, this is just a clean up the ordinance, and then city at any point could move forward with
Gotcha.
actually.
So I think what I'm hearing is, so where this addresses how an individual can request an accessible spot. I think what I'm hearing is you'd like to see an accessible spot in front of City Hall, or at least have that discussion.
Well, yes, but that's, Chelsea explained to me that can be done in the future.
Oh, yeah, so this
Which is
doesn't, this is just the mechanism,
Yep, all right,
so.
perfect.
All right, any further discussion? All right, can you get a roll call vote, please?
Conley?
Yeah.
Daniel? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Reed? Yes. Ruben?
All right, the motion passes. Thank you all. That takes care of the action portion. Excellent. So as we move into the council part of the discussion, so first of the year, we can go ahead and revisit this, I guess. It is the want of this council, per the rules and procedures, which we'll actually be discussing here, to always have, where practical and feasible, to have the opportunity to review information and not have it pressed upon them at Friday and then have to be ready for Monday. So the goal is to always talk about things in advance, and then take action on them in the following meeting. So I mentioned already earlier that, so next time, in addition to the pasture lease, we'll have the appointing of council members to standing committees, as well as all the council appointments. We've got the CPACE program. And actually, we'll discuss that when we get down to it. But the first one is the rules of procedure. So what is included in your packets is rules as they were presented last year, which includes, you will note, a format of the agenda. It's probably worth revisiting that to make sure what we're doing is close, or if we've added it. I think that we added the adoption of agenda. We added this as a separate item because it was kind of convoluted the way it was written out last time. And so what we've adopted since, I think, is helpful. But open the floor for council discussion.
The first thing that I guess I kind of wanted to bring up is that right now in the council rules and procedures, it says that each standing committee shall be required, or was it?
What part?
Well, it's on page, the starts at the top, the bottom of page 2. Standing committee meetings will be open to the public and, you know, when they are. And then at the top of page 3, they'll be held in council chambers on the date the council meetings at the time decided. And I didn't know if we wanted to strike on the date of council meetings in case we need to have, because of scheduling, if we need to do a Monday night meeting, if someone cannot attend during regular work hours.
I think that's a great idea.
So then it kind of gives the committees a little more leeway
Yeah, I
on
think
when they can have them. But, I mean, obviously, they'll still be out there and they'll be on that scheduled time all the time. But, you know,
Right.
maybe then we don't have 7 hours of meetings on a Tuesday.
right. The only two things with that I see is obviously having it prior to council meeting date.
Right.
Making sure that's included. But then also in terms of announcing those agendas,
Yeah.
we'll have to make sure that those are being put out 2 days prior. So just kind of look into Lonnie, like, is,
Lonnie, if we put the agenda out on Friday still, would council standing committees be okay on Monday? Does that meet the 2-day requirement for sunshine laws?
I don't know, I'll have to look, because I don't know if it's.
So we'll look to staff for clarification on that, as well as the city attorney,
Okay.
and we'll bring that in for next time.
Didn't we used to have one on Monday still?
I think we
They
did,
used
yeah.
to, yeah.
There was one committee, I think it was the public health and safety was always
Monday.
Monday afternoons, and we didn't change when we posted those.
Yeah, I think we're okay, but we'll validate that for council.
I think the advantage of having a Monday night meeting is that more of the public could attend if they wish.
Yeah.
Rather than midday.
Yeah, and I just think, you know, people who, council members who have to work during the scheduled hours, you know, it
Yeah.
just goes, it will
It can
help.
be a little intense having the meetings from 3:45 all the way to 8, yeah.
Yeah.
And not having an opportunity to eat dinner, come in
Right.
fresh, that can be
I mean,
a
I'm all
lot.
for
You can get frozen pizza while you're cooking for everybody else.
They apparently deliver.
Okay, so, do we just make a motion to make that change?
Well, I think at this point, just
All
make
right.
a note, so what I would propose is that the edits that you guys discuss about, I'll look, to you, Council President Ronning, to basically present us with an updated draft based on the discussion tonight. And if council's
Okay.
ready to move forward with it, next week we'll do that.
So, let me make a note here. And is everyone okay still with, the public notice and taking the minutes so that if another council person wants to attend those standing committee meetings, they can, because it has been
Publicly.
publicly noticed?
100%.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Because I know there's been times in the past where you weren't on that committee, you could not go.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I firmly think that anyone and everyone should be able to come to these meetings.
Okay, so
So
we'll
at
leave
least
that all
should
as
be public
is.
notice.
Okay, and then, we had I thought we updated this, so the standing committee agendas have to be by Wednesdays? Is that
We
right in
did.
here?
Was it Wednesday?
Yeah,
Wednesday, by the end of day,
Is that in here?
Wednesday.
Am I missing it? And then the agenda, anything for the agenda has to be Thursday, but basically our standing committee agendas are for, I guess if you have supporting documents, they need to be there by Thursday, but not seeing.
I'm wondering if this is an old
I think
copy.
I think it's been all the same.
I think we changed that
We did, I thought we updated that. Okay, so I'll make sure that changes in there, because I think that works a lot better for, the mayor and Lonnie to get that agenda put together if they know the
Or
standing
have
committee's
questions.
agendas, yeah.
I think it's,
It's in part 4.2.
Okay, so doing
Part 4, section 1 says,
12 PM.
to the city clerk by 12 PM on the Thursday before the council meeting.
The council for consideration on Thursday at noon. And then, so just that to Wednesday?
Yeah. Let's
end of
do that.
day.
But yeah, let's do Wednesday, the end of day and not noon.
yeah, no.
So that means that they're Thursday morning when they come in.
Yeah.
And practically speaking, I would like to, if those standing committee meetings are included, to have those sent to the council president as well.
And copy Lonnie, maybe I'll copy Lonnie and
Yeah.
Adam as well, too.
Council president and Lonnie and mayor. Clerk, let's keep everything as titles, council president, clerk, and mayor.
Sorry. Okay, and is everybody okay with the order of business? It seems to really work well last year, so,
And this looks like this does have it after we adopted the
okay.
current agenda. Any other comments that folks had or things that they wanted to revisit?
I know that, we had discussions around having documents available, working documents as well as draft copies in the agenda packet. So I'm not sure if there is, I'm looking through this.
So, may I?
Yep.
So like the one we have this week where there's a clean copy plus a track changes,
Correct.
so document that we want a clean copy and a track changes.
Mhm.
Where would you want to put that?
That's kind of what I'm looking for, and
It seems to me like that agenda stuff where it's copies of the agenda and supporting documents shall be available and blah, blah, blah. So I think it's just expanded to say clean copy plus a track changes copy.
Yeah, right there where
it might even be worth putting in a section 3 of just what that looks like, if you want to make any specific distinctions on it. Again, in terms of at the bottom, putting draft copy presented X date, like if you want to make that specific to where it's really consistent. If we wanted to expand that far, we could very easily just say that draft copies and working documents should be included. But
Discussion.
Other thoughts? Things that we may have adopted that you just kind of want to, what's the word I'm looking for, document for history and future generations to help
Well,
keep
and
it smooth.
I don't know that we necessarily need to do that on a brand new document. I think it's more that when we're changing an existing
Right.
document, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, when changing existing.
yeah, unless you,
All right, so for that one, what I'm gonna, I think that's, it sounds like we're closing in on the discussion on that. What I would like to, have is that anybody else comes up with suggestions, if you would please email your council president, with those comments and suggestions. I think I heard of the action item, President Ronning, that you will prepare the document for us.
mhm.
And we'd like to see a clean copy and a track changes copy.
Bonnie, would you be able to get me the editable copies of that Word document?
And on that, just a cautionary, advisory to the council. If you would, we want to avoid electronic quorums. So, it's easier if you direct correspondence to the council president. If it is necessary to send something out, make sure you use BCC so that nobody accidentally hits reply, because the second they do, we now have an electronic discussion. We can fix it, it's just a paper trail, we have to go back and make sure we post online. So it's easier if we just follow the rules as best we can up front. Nobody gets castigated for being human, so we'll deal with it. On that, by the way, I will add, just because of today, there are some scrapers out on the website that are sending out targeted spearfishing attacks. They're not very good scrapers. Today I got one deer vacant, and it was, and it had Mayor Lonnie Hanson on it, so their Deerfield 1, please help me with that too, was not set up real well, but just a cautionary tale. If you have any questions on that, please reach out. Fortunately, I think most of those don't sound very much like me, and so people generally detect that they are spearfishing attempts, but just have an awareness of that. If you have a question, and certainly before there's any obligation or any committal from the city, please reach out.
I have a question.
Councilmember Rude.
Maybe this, after tonight, this won't be my problem for me, but, how did things get on the agenda? Was there some deficient, this was, approved in March of '24. So did we find some deficiency in this that we needed to bring it up again, or what's up with that?
So the answer is yes, but it's also one of those actions, kind of like picking a council president, is just setting the rules of the game at the first meeting or as quickly thereafter as we follow. So in this case, it could be the second meeting of January, or if people want to continue massaging it, as is what happened last year, it may extend a little bit beyond that.
And like to March 26th, okay.
Yeah, last year it did. So. All right, any other discussion on that? All right, hearing none, let's go to the CPACE resolution. So you'll recall there was an edit there was a couple of questions and concerns that came up, at the last meeting. I did a follow-up action, with the folks we were working on, and they actually, as they started commenting, it's like, wait a minute, you are referring to a resolution of intent that is not what was collected by council previously. So in the packet, there are actually two resolutions. The first is a resolution of intent, and part of it was as they sent over a resolution, it was referring to public hearings and such. So the first thing we would need to do is we would need to, pass a resolution of intent. We would need to announce the public hearings. In the resolution of intent, you will note that they made the edits. They show up in red. This was the council's feedback that basically said, that the Red Lodge would maintain and continue to report the assessments to the appropriate Carbon County officers for enforcement, because the way it was written before, it sounded like the city was doing the enforcement. That was a concern. The second part you'll notice is that there is a future resolution to be addressed after those public hearings.
We do have to have the public hearing.
Pardon?
We do have to have a
You
public
do,
hearing.
you do have to have the public hearings, and those public hearings have to happen after the resolution of intent has been passed.
Okay.
So this is one of those slow down and do the process right type of things. I noted that the language that we requested was reflected in the first of the resolutions, the resolution of intent, which if council is good with, we can move forward with next time. But it was not reflected in the resolution that would happen at a future date.
So the changing it to the county officers is just because they collect the property taxes, is that correct?
That was
Okay.
my understanding of the discussion.
So it's not like an extra, okay, it's just if taxes aren't paid, they're going to be processing those.
Right, we
Okay.
don't enforce failure to pay taxes.
Right, so I just didn't want to be putting something extra on them that they don't normally do. But if they don't pay the tax, then the county will assess it anyway, fees, like fees and penalties.
You can read that?
I can.
I'm sorry. Any other discussion at the table, other than eagle eyes over here? All right, is the council comfortable moving forward with the resolution for intent at the next meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Dennison reviewed this all and thought it was.
We can follow up with that to make sure.
He did, he's the
Oh.
one who sent this over.
These two?
The resolution of intent, I thought he.
No, this
No?
was, we got this from the CPACE program.
Oh, so he did, establishing it, that's what he had said was okay? No, he is.
The one he did was a, what's the word I'm looking of, an amalgam of these two. I think their process
Oh,
changed.
they were,
I think they've processed something.
okay, okay. Yeah, we'll just verify that everything's okay with it then before we vote.
And I look forward to having some public hearings, because I think there's been some very valid questions raised in the public hearings, and one of them is this mechanism to allow financing for green alternatives. Will it also cover the cost of traditional backups that may be required due to our environment and climate that we have here? So there's a lot of things that you may have to have a backup if it's a critical service. You can't rely on just A or B. So that's stuff I look forward to in the public discussion portion. Councilmember Rood.
Do these, I'm gonna call it last best case, because I think it's a clever name that you've named it. But do their people travel around to these public hearings and answer questions?
They
Can
can,
we
if we
do that?
request them. Yeah.
Okay, all right,
They've
Tom is
given
online right now.
presentations to council. They've done it remotely.
okay.
And I think we had an in-person one at one
All
time.
right.
Yeah.
But like I said, we started down the direction that they provided previously, and we have now backed up, and based on their feedback, said, well, what about the resolution of intent? I said, we didn't do a resolution of intent.
And Tom is online too, if any of us have any questions too.
Oh,
Well,
Tom,
Tom?
do you have anything you want to add to that, sir?
I think he left.
Did he leave?
No, he's just turned on his camera.
Oh, there he is.
In fact, we have the state agency representative, Carolyn Jones, on here too, and she is much more of an expert than I am. So I'm kind of the local support guy. Our organization was promoting CPACE around the county and the city, and but Carolyn is definitely the expert when it comes to any heavy duty questions, and I'm sure she's happy to help.
The podium has been deferred.
Yeah, this is Carolyn Jones. I am the CPACE program manager. Happy to answer any questions tonight. And if you'll let me know when your next meeting is, where there's also the public hearing, I'll be happy to try to attend. I would try to attend in person, but given the time of year and the temperatures and the snow recently, it's probably going to be a virtual option. But I'm happy to do so as long as I don't have a conflict. I apologize. I was not able to attend your meeting on December 10th, because I was actually down in Deer Lodge presenting to the Anaconda Deer Lodge county commission as well too. So yeah, I'm happy to attend, any meetings that I'm able to and answer any questions.
Carolyn, could you tonight speak to the fact of, yes, we need to pass this resolution of intent, and are we proceeding as specified?
Yes, yeah. So as we visited a little bit on Friday, Mayor Westwood, we basically have, the process is going through a public hearing process. So there is a resolution of intent that a local government or local jurisdiction would adopt. And within that resolution of intent, there is language notifying that it is the intent of the local government body to move forward looking at this program. And moving forwards towards adopting that. And within that language, there is a place to establish when the public hearing will take, or public hearings in the case of each, jurisdiction has it a little differently, when and where that public hearing will take place. And then that public hearing takes place. And then the final step is the final resolution actually establishing the district, and the language within that document basically goes back and refers to the date and that the resolution of intent was passed, and also that the date that the required public hearing was held. And then those three steps basically become the formal process of a local government opting into the CPACE program. And I did take your note of, you're right, I forgot to put those edits in the final resolution, so I will revise that tomorrow and get that off to you, Mayor Westwood, so that final resolution has that same edit in regards to the enforcement.
All right, thank you. And then, if my understanding is correct, pending approval by the city attorney, resolution of intent on the next meeting?
Yes.
I don't have any heavy-duty
Okay.
questions tonight, so.
All right. Ordinance 963, this is the amendment and codifying the short-term rental discussions. Councilmember Tupin, could I have you speak to these two documents?
Yeah, so we did include the working document as well as the drafted copy. As we don't have this up for, action tonight, I was just wanting to kind of put it out to anybody at the table. If there's additional information or, perhaps additional information that we could bring to the next meeting of some of the whys we did things, making sure that the changes make sense, really putting it out to everybody tonight, so then that way by next meeting, all the questions can be answered in a more organized fashion.
Is the intent to have this just for discussion in 2 weeks or for action in 2 weeks?
I mean, I would personally think it's ready for action, but again, putting it to the table.
Yeah, so the ordinance 963 is specific only to, short-term rentals within the city limits. And we basically just clean this up because a lot of this is going to be, covered under the business registration ordinance.
Yep.
So let me
that
pose
has
the question.
So I don't know if we want to approve them both at the same time, because that isn't quite done yet.
Okay,
You know, because we have some other things on that business registration ordinance that we have to clean up as well as this.
Yeah, not just that.
Because we do have the draft part of the short-term rental cleanup on the business registration, but we don't have the rest of it cleaned up yet.
Okay, and so, and it's council's prerogative, there's not a right or a wrong answer. This part was done, and so we got it to council. As we prepared the second part, there was still some extra time needed just to correlate and make sure that it had the same level of breakdown. And so I'm, however council directs, I'm fine with. Do you want to just focus on the second part next time and then put them both in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I am, again, mostly I just wanted to put any questions out there now that both of these copies have been presented, so then that way we can provide any information that, whether it's council would like to have or general public. I know that Angie has put together some questions, and so I plan to have those addressed as well, of why additional types have been added, but, that is kind of what spurred my head on that, was how can we make it very clear to why these were done.
Well, and just so everyone knows, I know that question did come why are we adding, or making, on-site managed short-term rentals exempt from the threshold or the
There's
cap,
some
whatever.
correspondence in the packet
Right,
on that.
and just so everyone knows, this was specifically passed as a public health and safety issue. And we were trying, when this was first done, that was their reasoning for doing this. And, we felt that by having someone on site 24 hours a day that would be able to manage that short-term rental, that should alleviate those public health and safety issues, which is why we were saying that, you know, if they're willing to have someone on site 24 hours a day, then it shouldn't really count against that you know, it would be exempt from that threshold.
I'm assuming 24 hours a day still entitles me to go to the grocery store and walk my dog?
Well, you know, honestly, this is more in line with, the Chateau.
Yeah.
Because they have a paid employee there 24 hours a day. It's more, it actually runs more as a hotel motel. But the way that it's sold, individual people own those condos. And every one of those condos has to have its own license, or registration, excuse me. Own
And
registration,
license, for that
yeah.
matter.
And like, yeah. So, but you know, it's really ran as a hotel. So should that really count?
So this
Again,
is to help kind of clean that issue up, and then I know that there was discussion of why owner occupied had changed its language, and that was specifically to allow you to go to the grocery store and walk your dog. So, because that was one of the concerns with how it was currently written, is it said that they had to be on site at all times when it was occupied, which that is,
Almost impossible.
I don't think that's a realistic definition. So that was why that had changed. So again, that's one thing that we can kind of break down, is each of those types and the whys behind each one.
And the other one was, a temporary short-term rental, and we were adjusting this more as, if you want to leave during the month of July because you really don't want 10,000 people to deal with, and you want to rent your house out on those weekends, you would still have to go through all the hoops of getting your fire safety checks, your health safety checks, but you could rent it out without having a count against, you know, it's just such a short, you know, it's a temporary short-term rental. It's not normally listed.
Would that
Because you
issue be
live
addressed in this one or in the other portion?
That will be the other portion.
Yeah, so, but it's listed in this, though, as an additional class being added.
Yeah.
And that's what that is, that temporary short-term rental.
In other words, those were the ones that were targeted as not really changing the character of the community
Correct.
and therefore
Right.
kind of
The
accommodating.
majority, yeah.
They still have to follow all the same
Temporary
rules.
defined?
Pardon?
Is temporary defined? Could it be all summer?
Yes, it is defined.
Okay. May I propose that it sounds like, this is not ready for prime time yet for action next time.
Yeah, because it's got to be paired.
Yeah, I
And
think
then-
it does have to be paired, so you can see both. I agree with Chelsea on that for sure.
All right.
And, yeah. And we'll,
That one's not gonna have any changes to it, I just won't be able to be up for vote until.
It might, but it's not expected to have changes.
right,
Sure.
yes.
Correct.
All right, any other input on the short-term regulations discussion? Going around the table once?
Well, I have one.
Yes.
If I was gonna leave for the month of July, why can't I just rent it without going through the hoops?
Well,
Because
there's,
if something happens, the city's not held harmless or held,
no, so the hoops as far as safety, fire inspection, all the public safety stuff, you would still have to go through. If you're going to rent it, you still have to go through from a
I
public
can't
health
just
and
make
safety.
a deal with a friend and say, here, pay me.
He could, but then he'd be doing something against the law.
Well,
A short-term rental is
Seems like
defined
that's
as
something-
30 days. or
30
less.
days is short-term rental, okay, so if they did it for 28 days, it
That's
would
a
be
No, that's a
short-term
short
rental.
That would be a short term.
If they rented it from you for 31 days,
At
It's a
28
long-term
days, it would not count against the thresholds.
okay.
At 32 days, it would.
to the same
It'd
person,
be hard to enforce.
to the same person.
And you wouldn't have to collect an resort tax on
So
that.
one of the things we did discuss with Danae and Lonnie is with the software that they have in place, it's actually pretty easy
Okay,
to run a scan, especially specifically on if someone were to get they run scans to make sure that people are within compliance all the time and that they're not illegally listing property. Again, if it's not listed, that would be very hard to enforce.
Okay, I didn't know that.
But-
I'd love a tour of that software sometime too.
You are welcome to reach out to the front office and schedule a time to just ask and understand. I will throw out that, there is a high likelihood we are at least considering the option of changing software. The package we've been using has been acquired by another company, and they tend to be lagging. It's one of those better mousetrap scenarios. They tend to be lagging behind some of the other companies as far as their ability to go out and do what you're talking about, which is the enforcement. They come to us with a list, and we had dozens and dozens of, these are people that are not registered businesses that are advertising and renting out on these sites. And so that requires a technology piece. And so we are looking at the possibility of switching to another package that has that plus some other capabilities. But there's also the logistics of when those licenses expire and how it works. And so I'm looking to staff to kind of come up with the short version is we'll ultimately be paying, that's a $13,000 a year package. It made us 85.
More than
Yeah,
that.
it paid for itself, and then some in those catches. But because of the nature of technology, we'll probably have an overlap of 6 months
Okay,
in there to make those work, and that'll come to council because it's a budgetary issue.
Yeah, if you ever want to hear more about it.
Yeah.
great.
All right, any other questions? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the planning board ranking and discussion. So, Jeff Benedetto, who is the vice chair of the planning board, did a really good job of kind of introducing this. So what they did is they had some topics that were there, and the planning board went through and made their rankings and their reservations. You will note that there's an option down, so WWC, Councilmember Root is our planning resource. It's an outsourced position, so we can get that level of expertise right now, as opposed to a staff position. And you'll note that they did not provide a value and a weight to the option of hiring a certified planner, okay? And I guess, yeah, I will, so this was just planning boards saying, this is what we think we ought to be working on next. It may or may not align with what council thinks we should be working on, they should be working on. But the goal here is to not have planning board working on stuff and then bringing it to council and finding out that council does not have any interest in pursuing it, to identify it up front. So with that, any comments or conversations or questions?
I just had a quick question, just because this was voted down by council, was to revisit, Article 4.6.0, outdoor advertising clarification in the historic district. I just want to make sure, I mean, we did vote down, the changes that they had proposed before, so I guess.
And I think I would offer that that's probably one of the reasons we're doing this.
Right.
So this stuff is just, some of these are covered in city zoning regulations. And if I were on planning board, which I have been, so I think I can speak to that, it's kind of nice to know what the input of the approving body is before you spend effort and guidance in there. And that doesn't mean that they will necessarily agree.
Right, yes.
But I would hope that there would be a discussion that would yield a better result than either body would have come up with.
I think that it was turned down by city council, and you can correct me because I wasn't on city council, because of the, trying to regulate advertising on the inside of the windows. There were other
And the
things-
lighting on the inside of the windows
Was that
and
the
the,
87-page one?
That's when they also tried to merge two into one.
yeah.
But there might have been things within that presentation that could be looked at again outside of the regulating inside windows.
Well, and it was also
but
the
everything-
lighting, they didn't want the
there's a lot
lights
of them.
left on in the windows.
In the windows.
And, yeah, I mean,
Well, I think it was, 3 feet from your window in, they had all kinds of control.
yeah.
But that wasn't the entire, outdoor advertising change. And so there may be things within that outdoor advertising that actually has merit. So,
I just don't want the whole same thing.
we don't want the same thing coming back the way it was
Yeah.
presented before.
I guess that's just my input anyway.
No. Well, we will
Council-
be going
oh,
through zoning, and that will be part of the zoning as well, so.
Councilmember Tupin?
Honestly, that might actually be good before getting started on the actual changes, is when planning board goes to review and update. So during the review process, maybe getting a presentation from planning board before the update begins. Does that track? Where it's like, we went through here, these are the identified issues, and a little bit of a presentation from planning board here, and then they can get questions from us or our feedback of, you know, that makes sense, like, move
Continue
on.
that.
Or like, that doesn't quite track to me, can you explain further? That might be the way to do it before wasting a ton of time. It's, going through and getting a rough idea of what we want to look at, and then making that a little bit bigger conversation.
Well, the first thing the planning board's gonna do is make sure that our zoning regulations coincide with state regulations.
And again, that's one that I
And
feel.
so I don't think that we need to run that past the,
No,
Right.
it's just these things down, specifically,
the things on the bottom.
yeah, that,
you're talking about.
yeah, exactly. And then maybe each one of those gets brought before council for approval, so it's not part of a big, huge 100-page document, where we have to say yay or nay to the whole document.
Yeah,
Right.
piece it out a bit.
Yeah.
May I propose that, I have the clerk of the council, BCC a copy to everybody that can be edited, and everybody go through and fill out their rankings.
Oh, like we did last year.
And then, and then send those to the council president, individually. And while you're doing that, include any additional questions, topics, things of, kind of like we're saying, I have a concern, I don't want to revisit this, I think we need to get it back in smaller pieces. And then we can provide that at the next meeting and kind of condense our moving forward with this.
And there may be other
Compress our
topics
time.
that we hadn't thought of on the planning board,
Yeah,
that might, you might have as well that you'd like to see.
okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then I did have a question just on this ranking system at the bottom. I see 3s and 2s and 4s, but,
May I?
yes, please.
Jeff, can you speak to the number system that was down, was that just how many people said, yes, we need to, or what is that to?
Well,
Not
in the
everybody
original
rated it.
spreadsheet, we just had zoning regulation review, and then there was these other items were listed, and so I guess the way we view zoning regulation review is we kind of review it as a whole package. And so, most of us just, basically rated, zoning review as number 3, or that's why they're all,
I see what you're saying.
Okay.
Yep,
Up
okay,
on the top,
That's
it
right.
says review,
So that's
update,
just bringing
use
it
those
down.
same numbers.
okay.
yeah, what that does is kind of lists those zoning items that we think need to be discussed and reviewed, and as the mayor indicated, if you have other, and Sandy indicated, if you have other items that you'd like to add to the list, but one of the things we would like to hear from the council is to fill in that last column in terms of what the council's ranking is.
Perfect.
And get your feedback. That answer the question?
Yes, perfect, thank you.
I think it will be.
All right, are we good on an action item, moving that forward? And then, what we'll do is we can send those results will be compiled, and the land use standing committee can kind of look at it and start working at it from there. Hold on, I'm getting a look from Councilmember Conley.
Well, I don't think it needs to go to land use. I think that the council members can go ahead and rate it. And we do have a planning board meeting next Wednesday because we're on opposites, and it would be nice to get the city council opinions on these as well. I mean, obviously, 1, 2, and 3 is gonna take us months. So it's not like we're gonna get to the other numbers right away, but it would be nice to have a plan.
Okay.
So sooner than later.
So I hear, let me tell you, so first off, I hear not necessarily need to send it to land use, and I'm okay with that. I don't know, I think I would, and I know it's because we're off schedule, it kind of throws it for a cycle. I think we should discuss it as a council before we send it over to planning. So I think that by the nature of the way the calendar works this month, postpones it to the next
Yeah, like I said,
to the next council meeting, which follows us.
So we can't, do you not just want to discuss it tonight? I mean,
Oh.
it's not that,
No,
rather than, I mean,
I'm okay.
unless other, it's,
I think this is one of those things as,
I mean, number one is obviously, and number two
Yep.
and number three are all probably, in my opinion, are all.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
Top three.
absolutely.
Yeah, agreed.
is there anybody who disagrees with the first three?
No.
Okay, so I think, council can relay on to
Yeah.
the planning board. We have Sandy, who is our current designee, and we have Jeff present, that continues with those.
Absolutely.
And then we can have some additional discussion on the others.
And
Because part of it is I want you to have the time to sit back and think, what's not on this list? Right now, I don't want us to be
Yeah.
constrained of what's
And,
here.
and I'm okay personally with what you have down below. It's just, if there's big changes to those, I just feel that they should come to council individually. So
As
that
to
we're not,
why.
as to why, yeah, and approval, like, here's this section, we wanna change this. So that we're not shooting down all the work that's been done.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, obviously, the fourth one there was hire a certified city planner. The planning board feels it's very important to have someone in-house that we can ask questions of, that is a certified city planner. The planning board is made up of a lot of volunteers who are not certified planners. Although Jeff and myself and Al have had years and years' experience on the planning board, but we have also had, city planners with us when we ask the questions. So, that's why it ranks so high on there. Review the subdivision codes, those are now 14 years old. The subdivision codes have not been reviewed or looked at in 14 years, so that's something you might think about. Obviously, workforce housing and affordable housing role, and how the planning board can expedite or zone or change lot sizes, et cetera, to accommodate that.
So that's more of a, brainstorming type session, that's not actually gonna be in the,
Well, it's how can we. have
right, but it's
planning
not
board-
actually gonna be in one of the above documents,
It's just something that
They
we,
discussed.
yeah, we know that it's important.
just trying to understand exactly. what it is.
Building on city-owned lots, we've had buildings on city-owned lots that were not thoroughly vetted and thought about. I don't wanna be in particular, but if you put a building on a city-owned lot and that group that had the building decides to disband, the city now owns that building. And so it's gonna be very important that we really consider.
So, can I ask you a question?
Zoning.
Because I know down the road here, we have these two resolutions here, especially, on looking at rezoning these parcels.
Exactly.
So, when you have a private entity that builds a
Exactly.
commercial property, so you're saying that if they, for whatever reason, left, then the city would own that building?
Would own that
Okay.
building, and so that's something that needs to be
And is that the
thoroughly.
way it is now?
Well, it's the Silver Strike, it's the, observatory, it's, over at the ballpark, although I don't know if that's a permanent building on a permanent foundation. But building on city-owned land, we need to actually just look at. I mean, these aren't gonna be really big items, but they need to be thoroughly thought out. Annexation and de-annexation is and may be really important to the city. And so, we need to look at those rules. We did have something here recently where we de-annexed a piece of property over off of Cole Drive. So we just need to make sure that we're prepared for that.
And we have multiple requests for annexations.
And, yeah, and there's lots of things to go on with that. So those are other documents as well. Expand the urban renewal district boundaries, and that it can be a bag of worms, because it has to be, an area of blight. The term blight is very important to the feds. They want an area of blight. So, that's something that the planning board, again, will revisit that, urban renewal district map. We already revised it once, and it may be up for more revision.
And just to add to that, in the current legislative session, Senate Bill 1 is being crafted that's going to define and articulate that, and that'll have impact. There's actually 2 or 3 bills that the League of Cities is tracking and advocating for. So URD is something, TIF districts in general is something that we could see some significant changes in this year.
So personally, I don't have any issues with anything. The only thing, the question I have is hire a certified city planner. I don't know if that's actually, I mean,
Planning board item.
planning board item,
I know.
that's a hire
It's
from
a
the
want and
city.
need.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't even know why it's really on there, except that you're recommending.
We feel it's really important.
Yeah,
We just feel it's
because
important.
that's,
As well as, you know, the joint communication with the county planning board, now that we have Marnie on board, I think she'll be a lot more active, and we want to have a good relationship with Bill.
so does the county, the county reps, do they also go to the county planning board meetings?
Well, Marnie, I don't think anybody on the planning board goes to the county planning
Marnie does.
meeting.
She's on the county planning board.
So she's on both planning boards?
She's on
Yeah.
both planning boards.
Okay.
But that's, by the way, she happens to be on both planning.
Well, no, I think it's great if she is,
Yeah.
because, you
It's
know,
really
that's-
a good communication, and we've been working for that for the last 15 years that I know of, probably longer.
Okay.
And of course, the airport master plan is everybody's interest, but for us, it's going to be the overlay
Mhm.
of the, do not build zone. So I just wanted to go through those to give you an
No, that's
idea of why they are on there.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I see items 1 through 3 taking the next 2 years.
Oh, no, no,
I mean nothing by that, I mean.
Even
it's
Jeff is going, no,
realistically-
no.
Okay.
1 and 2, you know, by the end of March, we hope that those will be all done. And then to review the zoning, luckily by having WWC, they'll go through our zoning regs and fix things that don't jive with the state rules. And we'll deal with those first, and then dive into certain areas like we see on the bottom.
Okay.
I would like to add, just a comment, somebody had made the comment about hire a certified planner not being,
An in-house.
and
Not a
I would
planning
like,
board item.
I would like to add my 2 cents. So right now, that planning function is being handled by an outsourced planner. We do have a presence that comes to the meetings because it was expressed as important to the planning board. But we have also, received feedback, and I'll let Jeff nod or shake his head or, you know, or comment. But we've had very specifically feedback saying, this is what we expect from staff reports. This is what we've been asking for. This is what we're getting. So I think that current planning resource, I'd like to add my 2 cents, and I think they're doing a very, very solid job.
They really
Now,
are.
that does not mean that there is not a need for, a staff person that oversees and is the equivalent of, for instance, our public works director is over parks meetings, and there's meetings that we've decided that makes sense. We don't really have a department head designee right now, and so as I look at that, that's kind of what I'm looking at, is we'll have a department head so that I'm not the weak link in that chain. But it may or may not be that well, no, we'll definitely go as certified, but it may not be that that's a full-time staff position to do that. And we will involve the planning board and specifically planning board leadership in that discussion.
Yeah.
But I think somebody made the point of it, that's a ultimately an administrative decision.
It's very important to the planning board, especially when we get into conditional uses where we have to make a quasi-judicial vote on it. And, you know, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and having a professional planner answer questions is really top of the
Doesn't
line.
WWC attend those meetings and give you?
We haven't had
feedback?
a conditional use since we've had WWC on board.
I think there's been a couple things that we've had staff reports on, because I remember specifically the call-outs of
Well, we had the
the
hospital.
quality, yeah.
See, personally, I kind of like having it be an outside source so that we don't have necessarily a staff person that is steering the planning board with their personal opinion. I mean, it's very much so a professional opinion, the way it is now, instead of putting a personal spin on it because,
We have had lots of personal spins
I-
from previous
But,
planners.
I will add, and this,
WE and Billings.
WC,
yeah.
yeah. I will add that as I've spent the year, and I have several folks throughout the community, including people that are on the planning board and leadership that I consult and get input from, as we draw out the city portfolio, I think a weakness that we're looking to fill with that open staff position, which we've approved and we've built in the budget. I'm gonna even open it up beyond certified planner, is a community development director,
Which we have.
that we've had in the past. And so, I think we're closing in on that. And I think that's gonna address some of these concerns and additions, like I said, but it gets to your point, Councilmember Ronning, it gets away from it gets to a system where a single individual with a single opinion is driving what our city looks like. So that's very much been, and it's been a background effort. It's not, we're not there yet, but it is continually going through the recursive process of, are we ready to move forward with this position? Are we ready to, but it addresses that need, but from kind of a little, I would say a higher
Do you
level.
want them to be driving that, or you do not?
With who them?
The community development director.
Want them to be driving, I think
The
we
teacher of
need,
Red Lodge.
I think we need somebody with that role and that expertise. But if for instance, if that is separate from the planner, that is, so there's, like I said, we need somebody who understands it and can provide high-level input for our planning board, for our council to make decisions. It's kind of like the city attorney, right? We need expert opinions to guide us as we try to make decisions. Go ahead. I see a look on your face.
I Chelsea and I are both looking at each other.
I think what he's meaning, and I see how you're taking it, but I think what he's meaning is you have someone who can be a staple of providing professional input within city walls, while the planning board, the council, and growth policy and master plan, those are things that can set essentially guardrails for that and also provide checks and balances for that individual.
Yeah. So how are you going, yeah, so I mean, I guess I would want to make sure those checks and balances are in place.
Correct,
I just
I'm right with you.
see-
Yep.
No, and thus the decision has not been made yet.
And an example of continuing to use an outside source, they don't know Red Lodge. And it was really obvious in both the downtown plan and the growth policy that someone outside of Red Lodge was writing this.
And I'd just like to add that was not the planning company, or not
It wasn't WWC.
it was not WWC. In fact, it's transitioned to WWC to help get it to the level that we want it to be at.
Yeah, to the finish line.
And I guess and there again, I'm okay with it being from, it's one thing to know and love Red Lodge, but sometimes that can cloud
It's a
your
strength and a
professional,
weakness
yeah,
both.
exactly. So I appreciate the outside
Perspective.
perspective.
And again, it's good that you can have two separate parties, one a professional entity and one a
Yeah.
community-driven board that can provide each other checks and balances at the same time.
Right.
So,
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
I'm gonna look out to the audience, specifically at Jeff. Jeff, is there anything you wanted to add to this conversation? I expect the last part or the overall conversation, either one.
Well, I would just add, the concern that Jody raised, I understand that, but that's why you have a planning board made up of local residents.
right.
They're they provide that guardrail, to offset that. And then I think what Sandy is alluding to, 2 points she made is, we really need somebody that's vested in the community, that knows the community to make appropriate recommendations that are relevant to the community of Red Lodge. What you have to understand is the contract planners, while they're very good and they've done a real good job to date in terms of what they're doing, they're also dealing with a number of other communities scattered around the state. So I guess from my perspective, one of the downsides of that is they're always on the screen they're not here in the room where we have the one-on-one and can have the eye contact and read all the body language that goes along with the discussion. And that part is really, at least from my perspective, is really valuable. I mean, that's the kind of back and forth discussion that goes on between the city planner or community development director and the planning board when we're discussing issues. So
Okay.
that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much.
And we
Thanks,
don't
Heather.
always take, in other words, when the city planner or the community development director makes a suggestion to the planning board, they don't have a vote. They just make a suggestion, keep us on track, give us some other ideas perhaps, but the planning board still makes the decision. So that community development director or planning board doesn't have a vote.
And it's important to note that there's a lot of those things, subdivisions and such, that ultimately do make their way to council as well.
Oh,
All right, because I'm inclined to move things toward an action point.
Yes.
Before our next meeting, so that Thursday deadline,
Mhm.
everybody's going to get a copy of this document, which will be emailed out by our clerk. And they're gonna fill in that final column with additional questions, rankings, concerns, and then we'll get a compiled list to include those in the next packet for discussion. Are we good with that?
Yeah,
That's not the most
No.
enthusiastic I've seen.
I just think it's, I don't know, personally, I feel like we can
be done with it.
we can be done with it tonight,
I feel
unless
like we
somebody
can-
has more that they wanna add to it.
I feel like that,
I think there's a lot on there already.
and that's
Yeah.
exactly it. I mean, things that are on this list, I feel very comfortable with the planning board moving forward on. I think we voiced our concerns of things with zoning and regulation, but in that regard, I don't think we necessarily need to fill out the priorities.
That's their request is, can we get council to rank this for us?
Are there any more changes? Like, is there anyone that?
Yeah, does anybody wanna make any changes to it, or how it's ranked?
I like how it is ranked.
Anyone?
Then just fill them out.
So
and-
relay on to council
Okay.
that the order that you worked out with is fine. And then we just do the fill it out as a safety check to validate it, and make Dave feel good?
Okay.
Sure.
We
Okay.
can absolutely fill
Check
it
and
out.
double check.
We don't-
I know how I'm gonna.
Okay.
I think we can fill it out. Do we necessarily have to bring it up for discussion at the next meeting?
Why do we need to fill it out if we all agree this is good?
That's kinda where
All
I'm
right.
at, but-
Agreed.
Okay, is council comfortable directing, our representative to relate to the planning board? We're good with this ranking?
Yes,
Yes.
but just please with the caveat, if there's changes to regulations, please bring them to us one at a time.
You don't want the big document?
No, well, I don't wanna have to make a decision on the big document, because one thing is not
Yeah,
what we like.
We don't wanna make 1,000 amendments.
You guys are no fun.
All right, are we done with that?
Oh,
Jeff, please.
I just want to point out that, for each of those zoning recommendations going to require public hearing, two, one in front of the planning board and second one in front of the city council. So if you bring 5 items, zoning changes separately, you're dealing with 10 different public meetings scheduled throughout the year and all that's involved. So I'm just throwing that out as just a reminder in terms of, I mean, I understand, and there may be some items that really deserve to be separate, but oftentimes it's more efficient to group things and move them
And I think
forward.
part of what I heard from Councilmember Tupin was, if we get a heads up, we can, even though that's not the official process, we could say, 1, 2, 3, yes, 4, revisit, 5, what are you thinking? And then you can bring it back.
yeah,
Did I
and
restate that properly?
I,
You
Kind of.
kind of like an inquiry injection point for
but
feedback?
honestly, if there's major changes here to some of these items here, I think people are gonna want a separate public hearing for it.
And that's kind of where my leaning is. So my thought is instead of a little bit of column A, column B, where if we can find a way to streamline it, again, because I personally think, obviously, we have a lot of state laws and regulations that need to get fixed, and I'm not expecting you to bring me a page at a time. But like, instead of, when that conversation starts, And like when it really starts to hit planning board's agenda, if that can be a presentation, well, more so, the planning board goes through, creates a more detailed version of those line items of, these are the things that we specifically want to address within our zoning code.
Mhm.
If there's anything in addition that the council would like to see addressed, we can then also add that onto the list, but then also having the ability to ask, why is that being addressed and what specifically are you trying to change? And so then that way,
Yeah, and why?
we can just have our input at that point, to where it's like, we really don't necessarily feel that the lights inside of the window is something that we're upset about, or, give me a bullet so I can have an example. Or that the allowed use tables and definitions need an update, which they do for the record, but,
And the short-term rental rules and regulations, what
exactly was that gonna look like? So, so we have that opportunity to provide that input at that point. And if there's a big topic that we feel deserves to have its own private meeting, or not private meeting, but
public.
Standalone.
yeah, a standalone discussion, then that can be one, it's like, okay, yeah, knock these bad boys out, because that's important, and also, at the same time, something that we feel very confident with what your goals are, and they would match with our goals, but these ones in particular might get sticky, so let's make sure that we address those separately. That track?
Jeff, do you feel you need any further guidance, or do you feel comfortable at this point?
No, I feel comfortable. I think what I heard is just want, more open dialogue and discussion between the planning board and the council when we get into specific zoning, and
Exactly.
Sandy can help relay that to the planning board at our next meeting.
We don't want to hold you up with your important work you need to get done while we decide what our priorities are, because I think they track pretty well with what you guys have done.
Yeah.
All right. Permission from the council to move forward?
Yes.
All right. The next item is the budget amendment for the Rocky Fork discussion. So there's two parts to this discussion. I would like to have this up for action at the next meeting. So the first part is the amendment for basically, an additional $520,000 worth of expenditure in cleaning up the property. That breaks down to, 415 that is covered by the federal portion, and 103, and this is detailed in the letter, that is covered by not the federal portion. Now, it's fair to state that we believe that we have state funding completely in place for it. The state is gonna cover the 25. So much like the acquisition, it looks like a 75-25. But having said that, if you look at the resolution 3613, that was the initial resolution which council granted, the mayor's office to go ahead and approve, or, to move forward and apply. But one of the things I noted as we were looking for that, as far as like what's within my realm to execute and what's not within my realm, one of the things is that built into that, there was a whereas it will require additional city council approval before basically potentially obligating city funds. I looked at this letter, and let's suppose the 75% comes through and the state says we don't have the 25%. By submitting this letter to the federal portion, we are basically saying, we, the city, will come up with the other 25%. And before I submit that letter, I would like a resolution from council authorizing me to submit that. I believe we will be successful in meeting that 25% from state funds, but it is obligating city resources, and that feels a little outside of my comfort zone without direction from council. Questions or comments on that? And in retrospect, I remember when we looked back, when we were closing on the property, which was done, the acquisition was 75-25, and part of one of the decisions that I made early in my tenure, because it showed up there, was that we were not going to spend any city funds on it. In that particular case, we had the means to not obligate city funds, because if we had not gotten the state funds, the property owners would be required to accept less. So we weren't obligating city funds. So when we were closing on that property and I went to the city attorney, his advice is you are just executing that which you have been directed to do by the council. And I felt comfortable, in retrospect, I thought, should we have done a letter? I don't have a time machine, so we can't go back and do that, but I knew we weren't obligating city funds. Here, the potential exists that I'm obligating city funds.
So I guess my only, thing is that when we do, it's a little late now to stop this from happening, but I think we need to look at, if we don't get the state funds, where's the $100,000 gonna come from? Obviously, it probably is going to have to come out of resort tax, but could it come out of 2 fiscal years? So it's only $50,000 out of each one. It would be, a qualified expense out of resort tax because it is going to be public space.
It's basically a parks,
Yes.
it would be part, what it would mean, practically speaking, is if we had to come up with $100,000, that $100,000 is no longer available to do other parks improvements for which is, we would end up saying, if we don't get that money, the money we've set aside for parks improvements is going to this specific project. Which means, so let's go to last year. We redid Moose Park, we did a lot of refinishing. One of the things that's
Yeah.
coming up in the current budget is we're looking at the roundabout, where we are looking at the benches. So if you look at the different parks programs that we have, this has the potential of saying, all of those get put on hold because we have to redirect that money here.
Probably for 2 years. Worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario, what is give me a range of what, or percentage of what the likelihood of this worst case scenario is? Like, because when we were moving forward with this, it sounded pretty much 100% that we were getting these funds.
And I have zero feeling that, there's nothing that we have heard that has not approved with that. And by the way, we could just choose not to accept the federal funds. What's different about this,
No, again.
no, but hold on. What's different about this from the property is we had a failback action which didn't involve actual dollars.
We already got
Demolition is actual dollars.
Right. We received, non-federal money for the buying of the property, for the purchase
For
of
the
the property,
acquisition.
for the
Yep.
acquisition. This is a separate,
It's for the cleanup.
the cleanup.
Gotcha.
So,
And the
it
original
also
application was like $12,000. It was gonna be torn down for $12,000.
and it also
Right.
includes bank stabilization. So, I mean, and that's very important for future,
Agreed.
water events that may happen, is for that bank to be
So-
fixed.
You're saying this is just protocol, but you don't actually,
Well,
Let me reassure you, Dave, do we really have a choice? Are we just dotting the i's and crossing the t's? I think there's some validity to we're dotting the i's and crossing the t's, but let's have a discussion about it too.
yeah, I mean, I just think we need to have that discussion. Like, will we be able, if by chance we don't get that 25%, can we split this up into 2 fiscal years, so it's not $100,000 out of this budget?
Are we saying we will commit that we need to come up with our 25% if something goes wrong?
Yes.
And by the way, I think the worst case scenario is probably more like 12.5%, not 25.
Okay.
But we're hearing 25. Still, currently, as of, they were wanting me to sign this and send them in right then so they could write us a check, and I said, not doing it without council's backing.
So, I understand you're just a little hesitant, you want to get our feel for it, and I totally agree with that. Everybody just needs to keep in mind that the worst case scenario is not very likely, so.
That's
And-
what we're
and-
figuring out, is what
Yeah.
is that likely?
And if it does happen, we're covered, we have the resort plan.
Well, but it has impacts, because the
Well, sure
dollars that
it
are spent
does.
on this can't be spent on somebody else.
I
I feel
understand.
comfortable, and this goes back to your conversation, I feel comfortable we can meet our obligation, even should we need to actually meet it, right? It's
Okay.
easier if somebody else is paying for it.
right.
I feel comfortable we can meet it, but we will make sacrifices elsewhere to do it. We can book the family vacation, but what it means is we're not going out to restaurants. It means we're not going to the movies. We're not, that's kind of what this is that it's a trade-off decision.
Okay.
Yep, got it.
I
I mean,
feel
I-
comfortable I mean, you have a good feel for this, I feel comfortable letting you handle this.
You are the,
Are we comfortable? So
you
what I
wrote
would
the
like is
budget.
that we'll have a resolution. Councilmember Tupin, I see you,
Same
I'm
thing.
just,
It makes me nervous, but no.
yeah, I'm just
It makes sense.
taking it in.
Well, Dave's in the same position, so we're all together in the
yeah,
same field.
yeah. No, I mean, it has to be done. I mean, we can't leave it, we can't turn down the federal funds. We
Right.
need the bank stabilization. Nobody wants the building there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get
So
it.
we have to
Get
move
it done.
forward, so,
And there's no comfort zone in coming up with a percent of, is this gonna happen or not?
no.
Yeah.
It's out of your control.
Let's just
Yeah,
plan
no,
ahead.
All right.
So we're all on the same page, let's move forward.
Lonnie, maybe, may I pick on you? Is there anything you want to add to that conversation that I have not addressed? Do you feel comfortable with that? Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
All right, so the next two items that I would like to discuss on are actually, and Jeff alluded to them before, so they are, one of the things that came up, and I will share, while it is not the impetus, it is not the driving factor, and I think we have to be very careful to not do that. There are some potential housing projects and options we are looking at. Those are secondary to, we need to look at some of our land uses and say, are they highest and best use? And I'll start with the first one, which is the property that is, we all think of as just a Silver Strike block. And if you look at that, you'll actually see that it is two pieces of property. And in part because this was something we were looking at for a potential housing project, there was this suddenly realization of, we have what is listed as P1 public space with a bowling alley and a casino and a sandwich shop and a coffee shop. That feels to me like it is misidentified on the map. And what I would like to do is send that to planning board to say, evaluate this and tell us what it should be. Again, this is getting back to that community development, kind of an eye to the future. Let's not do a piecemeal, put this together. What does that look like? My gut tells me that's probably a commercial C3, I think is what the adjoinings are, or something there. Pardon?
C3 North.
C3 North. That feels to me like that probably makes sense. I don't know what the history is about how it ended up this way, what the true restrictions of that are. And at our planning board meeting, the guidance we received from our planner is, the official way to move this forward is for council to request that the planning board take this up and look at it. Now, the second thing that you heard, and I do like that he listed, several things that they should take into account, and number one on that list, consistency with the city's growth policy and adopted policies. I think these are ranked appropriately and accordingly. And I think this is just a discussion. We can take action on it at the next meeting. Where was I going with that? I think, yeah, I said, to me, this is a community planning exercise. Let's step up 50,000 feet, and look at this and move it forward. There is a public hearing that's required. I guess that's where I was going with that, is the process involved of what's next and what's next. So planning board, needs to have a public hearing if there's doing a zoning change. So they need to discuss it, decide what it's going to be. They need to do the zoning change, and then that ultimately comes back to council before we move forward. And the second thing that we heard tonight was a priorities and a timing issue. As we look at that planning board priorities, Jeff indicated that he already feels through March and April is already booked. Is this something that we want to direct them to move up any more quickly? Or is this a process that flows smooth as fast?
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense to review zoning when you don't have the growth policy in place. I mean, that's part of the reason they've been putting off the zoning changes and reviewing that is so that you can have an updated growth policy and master plan. So realistically, let them finish that and then that should be reviewed.
The growth policy is the guiding document for all zoning,
Exactly.
so it needs to be completed first. And there are lots of ways to go after that. This is an odd thing. When we zone, we don't zone by what's currently there. This happens to be, Silver Strike happens to be city land. And, just because when you look at P1, that's not a use that you can use it for, but it wasn't zoned when they did it, so.
Or I don't know, or if, and by the way, the reason that this is coming forward, just to kind of add a little bit of additional flavor to this, this is unique because it is city-owned land, so thank you for that, Sandy. So what normally would happen if somebody wanted to do a zoning request, so for instance, we had this happen last year, we'll recall, up at the Spires. The property owner comes and says, we would like you to reevaluate this for zoning, because we have something in mind we'd like to do with it, we'd like you to reevaluate that. We happen to be the property owners. So that's what this is we are the property owners, we'd like you to look at it. What's a little bit different in this picture is that it is the city. We're not saying, we want X. Instead, we are saying, please look at it and tell us if this is appropriate, or should it be something else? Is that the right approach for us to be taking?
Well, and specifically on this resolution, I don't know that there's necessarily a huge hurry in it, because we have the property leased out for X number of more years, where nothing,
Yeah.
nothing's really gonna change, except we just want the zoning to match what should be there. Like, should it be the rest of commercial city entrance, since that's where it's at?
I will share that I received one request or question, I guess, inquiry, that asked if this was an effort to terminate the Silver Strikes lease. It is not. Like I said, it was actually triggered by this little corner that was gone, and like, is there something that we can use that piece for, from a city perspective, that will help us, whether it be housing, whether it be utilities, whether it be anything, you know, is there something we can, the answer is, as it sits right now, we can't do anything with it. That felt wrong to me. That's like, yeah, I don't think that was, I think somebody just didn't notice that that's what that was.
So as far as the priority goes for this, I'm all for passing this resolution, because, I mean, the zoning that's there right now does not match anything around it.
Okay.
So, and I don't really think it's the best use of that property, to be public and
Public space,
space.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
So,
yes,
let me capsulate, let me say what I'm hearing, you tell me if I'm doing this right. A, we're okay moving this forward as for action next time. However, we're not comfortable saying, drop everything you're doing and move this to the top of the stack.
Correct, yes.
So basically, that is as the resolution is presented.
Yeah.
Anybody want to tweak my regurgitation, or is that close?
Good.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on that piece? All right. That should make the second one a little bit easier. It's a similar conversation. The blue line on the up there, the airport part, my conversation actually had to do with, most specifically, with that area east, of Airport Road. So it was part of the airport, and until we get things cleaned up, it is still part of the airport. Again, what is the best use of that land from a city planning, community development perspective? The way the parcels are divided right now, it actually includes a section of what's inside the airport fence, which, by the way, is also a fair discussion. There could be a potential for some conforming isn't the word I'm looking for. There are uses of land that you can do in the proximity of airports that do not endanger the operations of an airport itself.
Or the people on the ground.
Yeah. So, I think whether those are different conversations, but I think, again, hand that to the planning board and say, you guys tell us what you think is, from a community development standpoint, what does this need to be appropriately? Again, in fair openness, there are discussions going on where some of that can be used for specific projects, specifically housing, that have been identified. But I do think, in line with this group's input, let's step back and look at it and make the decisions at a higher level. Any problem with that, as written?
And I'm okay with that too, but, when you're looking at that, would there be a possibility of, creating two zones based on the road as well?
I think there,
One parcel?
yeah, so the recommendation of the planner at this point is, because that's a parcel right now,
Mhm.
include it as a parcel, but certainly, this could be updated to say, or planning board could on their own, or we could include that in the request, look at making that 2 parcels. Now, in order to zone it, my understanding is, and I'm not sure I completely buy this, that you generally do zoning for all those property lines. Having said that, I know there are ranches that are big enough that they're part in one county and part in another county, so there's,
Right.
or part in the city, part not in the city.
I just
So,
think that defining line of the road itself, I think that you could have 2 separate types of zones on each side of that
It
road.
has 2 different, it's by legal description. If the legal description is 1, you can't have 2 unless you break it up.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying that might be a route to take.
Yeah.
Because I could completely see 2 totally separate things
You can't,
and uses there.
and again, are we waiting for the planning board to make that in their recommendations, or do we want to include that direction in the resolution? No, that was a question.
or is there any rush?
I don't see it there.
No?
Yeah.
Well,
I'd like everything done yesterday, but, you know.
well, I think it does need to be done sooner, up there, especially if there's, the lot that the Silver Strike's on is not probably going to be developed, this summer. But there's a possibility, moving ahead, that something could start happening based on what the zoning is up at the airport. So,
I think that's true, both of those
So-
parcels.
so I would think that this does take a higher ranking, of getting something done there.
Let me re-ask the question. Are we putting this on for action as presented, or are there specific changes you want to make?
I would like to add, that it be subject to splitting that parcel up based on where the road is.
So,
And it
for
would, that would
guidance
include,
on?
for guidance on each side. And we could, you'd probably have to resurvey it and, I don't know, subdivide it, I guess.
Subdividing can be
A lot
pretty,
line adjustment?
A lot,
a lot line adjustment could work, yeah.
yeah.
That'd be worth talking to county on. Just because, specifically, I know
I mean,
subdivisions
if you
can be
make it R4,
very
I
late.
don't think they're
Yeah.
gonna want R4 right next to the airport, but across the road,
But if
Might
it's
work.
community interest, it covers everything. It covers housing and
but I'm,
commercial. For C3, it's C3 North.
Edit it before putting it on the agenda?
Oh, not Silver Strike, the
No, I know, Brewery Hill.
top of the hill.
That's C3
but
North.
it,
I suppose, yeah.
okay. And then-
Action in next meeting, yea or nay? Straw poll, going around the table. Councilmember Daniels. Councilmember Conley,
Yay.
running.
You
can come with amendments,
okay.
sure, but it's expected to come with amendments?
Yeah, well, I just think, I would be nice if land use.
Yeah,
and
I think
planning
land
could take
use
a
and
look at it before we bring it.
Okay, Councilmember, Ruth.
I'm gonna say nay.
Okay.
Chopped liver.
That, it looked at, the other outfit looks at it. Zoning, planning, land use,
Well, that's what we're doing, is saying, giving it to the, oh, you're talking about the standing committee.
yeah.
Okay. I'm fine with sending that to standing committee first. So we've got one that's gonna come forward,
So I
one that's
would
gonna go to
rather,
standing committee.
yeah,
Oh,
right, yes,
okay.
exactly, yeah. I think that's.
Did I capture that? I'm sorry. Councilmember Miller, I'm not done voting yet. We're not done voting yet.
Standing committee.
Standing committee? Okay. Okay, so just to make sure I captured that properly, the first resolution is gonna be for action at the next meeting. The second resolution is going to go to standing committee for work before it gets there.
Yes, I think that's.
Thank you. All right, correspondence in the packet. There was a letter in there about the Department of Treasury that I'd just like to speak to very quickly. This was basically the 23 audit, which was completed in 2024. You may recall there were several items from that audit that were there. This one is special because it involved federal funding. And you will recall that the issue was that we didn't have a paper trail saying that we had validated that Great West was not suspended, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. and we put in the fix that that won't happen again, and they said yes, so this is just their letter accepting that.
Right.
Lonnie, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, it wasn't regarding Great West. It was the,
Contractors under Great West.
yeah.
Okay. And I think what we found out in after the fact is that they did do it, we just didn't have the paper trail. So they were okay with it, they just said, don't do it again.
It sounds like we're not going to jail.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, welcome to the block.
There was also a correspondence, recommending we look at or consider a Bitcoin fund. And then there was some feedback that was already referenced earlier on the STRs. Is there any other, correspondence that council would like to share or add to the records?
I see Alan has hung in there, and, I'm just gonna speak for myself, that all I know about Bitcoin is Sam Bankman-Fried, who is in prison for the rest of his life. So next time you're in town, if you wanna enlighten us to a nicer side of Bitcoin, I will be all ears.
Sure,
All
have
right, anything, table, hold on, we're at the table. Anything from the table on correspondence?
I kind of want to echo what she said. It's too volatile. It's not something the city should be involved in. Me personally, yeah, but the city, no,
Absolutely not,
not, absolutely not, so.
Okay.
absolutely not.
So this more, we're just accepting correspondence at this point. All right, hearing, nothing further on correspondence, what I will do is I will, open, the meeting for public comments. Let me just get my timer up and ready. This is basically, opportunity to be heard on anything, within the city's purview. And we'll start with those in the room. If they'd like to speak, stand up, please, and introduce yourself. And we'll go from,
All that, man?
We'll decide later.
Bill Bullock, 900 Kainuu Avenue, I'm your county commissioner. I would offer, or at least ask, I know you guys are talking about CPACE and your decision's your decision. The only ask I would have is, if there are modules or things necessary on the taxation side between the collection point, the county, and Department of Revenue, the assessor, can we please get that ahead of time so we don't run into the last minute required acquisition of the module necessary to process, like what happened with the TID or with the TIF or whatever you guys call it? That was a force deal we had to do at the last 11th hour, and it was $5 or $15,000 out of pocket that was not forewarned, not given the opportunity to do anything with. It was do it now. And then some correspondence I texted to the mayor. I received it hasn't even been assigned a bill number yet, but there's a bill being circulated to be proposed for numbering and to pursue through the legislature this year on the resort tax definitions and how they may expand that into affordable housing or include that with it. Very preliminary. Mayor, you've got a copy in your probably.
I've not seen one from you, but I am aware of it, so.
I sent it via text. You got it during your meeting.
Okay, there we go. So I haven't seen it yet, because I don't pay attention to my phone. Okay,
There you go. Anyway,
there we go.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, anyone else in the room? All right, let's move to online. Thank you for being patient and hanging out with us. Again, your opportunity to address the council on anything. Alan Best, I see a raised hand. You have the floor.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Alan Best, and my address is 508 North Hauser. I hope you all had wonderful holidays. This is a follow-up talk to a previous talk on a Red Lodge Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, and I have a couple of updates. To review, at the last meeting, I proposed that the city create a Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Fund that can accept donations of cryptocurrency, to include Bitcoin, to be held for a minimum of 10 years. The donations-based approach sidesteps fiduciary responsibility and costs the city nothing. I've committed to seeding the fund with $400 of my own money. Several U.S. states, as well as the incoming White House administration, spearheaded by Wyoming Senator Loomis, are considering establishing a Bitcoin reserve. The first update is that since the last City Council meeting presentation, 11 more states, plus Vancouver, Hong Kong, Germany, Poland, Japan, Russia, Chile, Czech Republic, Canada, and Switzerland have begun their discussions about their own strategic Bitcoin reserve legislation. Unlike what I'm proposing, those governments are actually talking about spending their own taxpayers' money to buy Bitcoin. That obviously is a more complicated conversation than simply deciding to accept donations of cryptocurrency. As of today, none of those governments has yet passed their legislation. Red Lodge could create the first governmental level strategic Bitcoin reserve in the USA and only the third in the world. This would be critical because wealthy international donors would consider funding us generously. Why? To show their support for a US federal Bitcoin reserve, to encourage other governments to do so as well, to speed up international adoption of Bitcoin technology, and to increase the value of their own holdings. Also, donors get several tax benefits, avoiding their unrealized cap gains and tax deductions to nonprofits to include Red Lodge, IRS Section 170.C.1. Cryptocurrency donors gave about $1 billion in 2024. And when crypto markets are booming like they are now, crypto billionaires give even more. Here's the second update. The day after the last city council meeting, $300,000 were donated to the organization supporting the Texas legislation, and they don't even have a Bitcoin reserve fund yet. Enthusiasts say that Bitcoin's capped total supply gives it gold-like properties with the added ability to send it anywhere instantly over the internet. Detractors say it's all just a $3 trillion fad and that it's too volatile. But if all we have to do is put a click here to donate button on the city website, and then there's a chance that the link goes viral and puts $1 million in our coffers overnight, then it's worth the effort. Our marketing line might be, Red Lodge, the first governmental Bitcoin reserve in the USA. Show your support for a federal Bitcoin reserve by giving to the Red Lodge Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. Because
we've reached the 3 minutes plus a little bit. Is there a possibility of having you send your comments in for a written form, and we'll be happy to include those?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anyone else online? Once again, back to the room. Going twice. Going 3 times. Thank you all for sticking it out.
Thank you all, thank you for your patience.
Oh, no, you're right.
As always, please, if you have comments or feedbacks on how I can improve this process, I welcome those.
Pizza.